After being raped by TT, I went straight home. I went downstairs into my room in the basement and I cried all night. I didn't sleep. I curled up in that bed alone in my room and I cried. The next morning, it was a school day, but I could not get out of bed. I told my mother when she came to the room to see why I wasn't dressed. I didn't tell her, Mom, I was raped last night. I lied. I told her I was sick. I don't know how many days that I stayed in my bed after the rape. I vaguely recall TT calling, trying to talk to me, but I refused to take calls from him. But my parents didn't ask why. Finally, when I was able to leave my room and go to school, I was embarrassed by my father. Shortly after the rape and going to school, where I was the captain of the varsity cheerleading squad, I was the photographer for the principal. I was an inductee into Who's Who among American high school students. I had received a scholarship from B'nai B'rith Society of Women to go to college. I was the vice president of my senior class, and very athletic and popular. But I was numb. I could not enjoy life. I could not enjoy any of the things that I was involved in no longer because I was numb from the rape. I was a walking zombie, going through the motions, still participating in all of the activities that I was involved in, but I couldn't feel. So about 3 months after the rape, my father came to my room, located in the basement, yelling and screaming at me to pee in a cup. I didn't know why, because my parents were very religious, and the only instruction that I received from them in preparation of my adulthood was not to sin. If you sin, you'll go to hell. So their direction wasn't very clear. And not to blame them because they had me at 16. So I'm sure they didn't receive any more instruction in life than what they could give to me at 18. So my father was yelling and screaming for me to pee in a cup. I had no idea why this man was telling me to pee in this cup. But this time I realized that his yelling and screaming didn't affect me anymore like it did prior to the rape. I was a daddy's girl, so if my father raised his voice, I would cry. He rarely had to whoop me because I was afraid of my father, respectfully afraid. And I wanted to please him. I wanted to do everything right to make my father happy. But on this particular day, when he was standing over me, yelling at me to pee pee in a cup. I didn't feel it. It didn't faze me. I was still numb. I didn't care. So I peed in the cup and I went to school. My regular routine, going throughout the day as if nothing happened, the only difference being numb. Sometime during the day as I was passing class after the bell rang for us to switch classes, my friends and teachers and the principal found me in the hallway whispering, "Your daddy's here and he says you're pregnant. Your daddy's here and he says you're pregnant." That's how I found out I was pregnant from the rape 3 months later. So my dad did not take this well. He called me a whore. He yelled, he screamed, he dragged me out of school and yelled the entire way home. But again, I was numb. His anger didn't affect me. His pain didn't affect me. His emotions and rage had no effect on me because I was dead inside from that rape. Because of my father's rage and because of his embarrassment of his child, his baby girl, being pregnant, I had to leave the home. And I went to the only place that I knew I would be safe. My grandmother's house. My paternal grandmother's house. His mom. But my father came over to Grandma Dee's house and raged and told her that I could not stay there. That I don't deserve help from my family. And I'm not sharing this to put my father in a bad light. I'm sharing this because I hope that it will help a parent understand what to do when this happens to your child. And what every parent should do when your child is pregnant, rape or not, is ask the question, how can I help you? It's a very simple question. How can I help you? How can we heal from this? How can we get past this? Don't blame. Don't assume that you know that your child is a whore or your child is a rapist. Ask the healing question. What can I do to help you, son, daughter? Because if you do not ask the healing question, you will damage your child for life until they are able to heal themselves. So I ended up staying with TT and his brothers because I had nowhere else to go. My father rejected me. My mother kept silent. The church that I was attending at that time actually required that I marry my rapist simply because I was pregnant. And one of the worst things you could be in the 80s in the Christian community was an unwed mother. Thankfully, I had enough intelligence about me to know that I did not have to marry my rapist, that I had a choice. Also in the 80s, I had a choice to abort my child or to allow her to live. And I chose life. TT and I tried to make a family relationship work, but because of the rape, I hated him. I could not get past it. Although he apologized, the hate, it remained in me. When we would try to have sex after our child was born, I was numb. I was dead. I could not enjoy it because all I remember was the rape and the wetness and the wiggle. It disgusted me. Sometimes I literally threw up when he finished inside of me. I couldn't do it. We remained friends and eventually stopped trying to have a family relationship. Many years later, about 9 months before he died, he sincerely apologized for the rape. And I mean, this must have been 20, maybe 25 years later. He had a terminal illness. And he cried on my shoulder the same way I cried when he raped me. And he asked for forgiveness again. But this time I knew that he meant it. Now, I don't know if he meant it because he felt that he was going to meet his maker and he needed to clear all of his sins or clear his conscience or whatever. But I knew my rapist meant it. But I still could not receive it because I was numb. I just wanted him to get off of my shoulder because he had already done the damage, and I still had hate in my heart for him. I could not forgive him because I could not forgive myself. So TT died, and it wasn't until after he was dead and buried that I was able to forgive him, because I took a long, hard look on the inside of myself and found that I had unforgiveness in my heart that I had never released. And because I had never released my unforgiveness, I couldn't forgive another person for what they've done to me. I couldn't ask the question, what could I do to help you heal? I couldn't see anything but my pain and my sorrow and my rejection and my hurt and my anger and my rage for many years until that man died.